Welcome back to Out at Reese's podcast, sub-era. Welcome back, everybody, to Out at Reese's sub-era, episode 2, this new series. I just kind of go over my thoughts every day, every week or every 2 weeks or so. Kind of still figuring out the schedule and everything, but, it's funny, last episode, I actually forgot to take out my Invisalign retainers. And so I was kind of talking with a lisp the whole time. And as I hit record and started going, I realized I'd almost forgotten to take them out this time, so I had to redo a take. So the last 2 weeks have been crazy, dude. It's, for one, I got back from Georgia, which was crazy. But before that, the weekend right before Georgia, I went to my boy Royal T, his very own show, the Royal T Show, out in downtown Salt Lake City at the Young Fly Studio. That was sick. Dude, the entire thing was crazy. Like, it was his first show that he's hosted for him. And I'd say it was a huge success. I set up my podcast there. I was interviewing all the artists there, which you'll actually be seeing this Friday probably. But it was crazy. I had so much fun. Everyone was just having a good time. The vibes were there. The energy was there. I loved it. The artists were awesome. Each artist that came on the podcast was awesome. I actually wanted to kind of go into that a little bit today, because as I was just kind of sitting there interviewing all the artists, they all just had so much to say about their inspirations and their drive and motivation and why, what they want to bring to the world. And that's one thing that I love about this community, this 801 underground community that here in Utah is just the community. Everyone is so supportive. Everyone's so connected together with each other, and it was beautiful to see. And I'm so glad that I can play a part in that. So if you saw one of my other podcasts when Royal T was on, it was for part of the Storm Tour. If you guys have heard about that, Storm Tour hosted by Lebo Tracks, kind of going around the country, hosting these performances for small creators, these shows for small artists and creators and such. And it was awesome to see. I got to go visit Miami, Los Angeles, which you're gonna see in the next couple months. You're gonna be seeing all of that in a documentary that I'm making. It's gonna be sick. It's gonna be so cool. But going to Miami and Los Angeles, it's the same vibes, the same community, everyone coming together to just bring each other up, and the artists' audience, their community, their own fans and such coming together as well to support them was awesome to see. And I've loved every second of it. I'm actually going to be hosting this podcast, the Out at Reese's podcast, over at for Storm Tour this November 5th is Storm Tour's coming to Salt Lake once again. Unfortunately, I missed the first time that they came to Salt Lake, but this time I'm going to be ready. You guys are going to get lots of good interviews and everything. It's going to be so fun. I've even considered doing it live. I'm still deciding on that. Haven't figured out exactly how that's going to go. If we do a live podcast, it'll be my first live podcast, which I'm like nervous about, bro. Like, doing those podcasts for the Royal T Show, oh my gosh, it was such a step out of my comfort zone. Like, I've shooting these podcasts with Devon just on the casting couch was alone really scary, because even though Devon's like one of my best friends and it's just me and him, nobody's watching, and we can just hit record and stop as many times as we want, right? Or if something happens mid podcast, we can just cut that out, So it's like there's that dynamic there where I could just, oh shit, something came up. All right, just keep rolling, right? Doesn't matter. We can just cut that out. But when you're interviewing different artists who I've never even met before, like 80% of the artists I interviewed, I'd never met before. It was like 4 or 5 of them I had never really met before. And it was like, that was a lot of pressure for me, just sitting on that couch. They all coming over, as we're running the interviews back to back, They come over and they just sit down and we just start. It's like, all right, go. And just go. What was going through my mind was, holy shit, there's people in the back watching me. There's the people who I've never met. Now I'm supposed to have a conversation with them. I'm supposed to interview this person who I've never met. Like, that's not me, that, like, I've never been one to do that. And so it was definitely a learning curve. You'll probably notice some of the nervousness or kind of awkwardness that you might see in me during that podcast once it releases this Friday. But it was crazy, man. I was just, the one thing that was going through my head was, holy shit, I hope I have good stuff to say and ask. Because half of it I had, certain questions written down. The other half was just what I could think of on the spot. And then, that's what I'm really trying to improve on, is because it was just so much pressure. I felt like I wasn't living up to what I should have. But I know obviously everything's a learning curve. Like, this is what, my 9th podcast that I'm shooting now. But before that was my 8th. And it was just scary, having people our first live audience watching a podcast. And it was crazy. And then afterwards, seeing all of the posts about it, right? Seeing people posting from behind the camera with their, like, on Snapchat or their Instagram stories of the podcast was the most surreal thing I've ever felt. Because, like, I pull it up and it's like, whoa. That's me sitting there, Usually when I'm clicking on stories or seeing podcasts from behind the scenes, it's usually these crazy big content creators that are sitting there, and it's just like, oh, that's cool, they're podcasting. But seeing myself there interviewing, it was just absolutely the craziest thing I've ever experienced, and I'm so excited to do it again this November 5th. It actually scares me, the concept of doing a live podcast at the event with a live audience in person, with guests I've never met before, with interviewees that I've never even talked to before, and now they're just thrown on the couch and I'm supposed to talk with them. That's like got me chills thinking about it. That scares me thinking about it, But I learned a lot from it. I just learned how to try and connect with people. Little bits at a time, though. Like, I can't just suddenly connect with people like that just from that one podcast, But I definitely have already learned how to do that a little better than previously. It was really just about forcing myself to just do it, no matter how much, no matter how nervous I was, no matter how scared I was. I just had to force myself. You know what? You're here. You have no other choice. The cameras are rolling. You just got to do it. And a part of me, when I was setting up the podcast pre-show, when I was there earlier, I was just, the one thought kept going through my mind is, you're not going to be able to do this, bro. Like, what are you doing? You're not someone who can just do this yet. Like, what are you doing? You should just make up an excuse. I think that was one thing that I kept thinking was, make up an excuse so you don't got to do this. So you don't got to go through with this podcast. Like, say a relative, like, got sick and is in the hospital or something, like, I was just trying to create these excuses to get out of it. But I knew it would disappoint everybody that wanted to be a part of the podcast and even go into the event, which was crazy because the podcast became half the event, because in one room we had the entire show going on, and then the other half of the studio, it was like my podcast, people watching, just back-to-back interviews, and I wasn't ready for that. I definitely mentally was not ready for that kind of pressure and that kind of stress. But I just kept telling myself, you can't let these people down. You can't let your bro down. You can't let royalty down, because they had these expectations of me, and that's what kind of kept pushing me, was I can't let these guys down. I got to go through with this. No matter how bad I look, I'm just going to do it. I have to do this. No matter how scared I was or anything, as many excuses as I wanted to make to get the hell out of there, I still just did it, because that's what it's really about, is seeing all the people come together through this podcast. It was just amazing. The energy, the vibes. I know I kind of already covered this at the beginning of this podcast, but it was sick. It was awesome. It's something I've never experienced before. And getting to experience that then was amazing. I was supposed to actually do that Back for Storm tour in Los Angeles. I had brought my mics, my whole setup. We drove from Utah to California in over just a single weekend, which is about a 9-hour drive, 10-hour drive, something like that. I couldn't believe we did it. And we just lacked so much sleep. We even got the whole podcast set up in Los Angeles at our Airbnb. We had Lebo. He was planning on coming. A few of the other artists were going to come on the podcast. But we were just so baked. Not high, but baked from just exhaustion, right? As soon as the show was over, we went back to the Airbnb. Everyone passed out. I remember getting back and I was like, my eyes sagging, trying to finish, kind of making sure the podcast was set up and ready. I was texting them like, hey, podcast's going to be up soon. You know, I was just out of it. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to sleep for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, because Royal T passed out on the couch. Then we had his boy Seb passed out on the bed. And I was like, all right, just 20, 30 minutes of rest, and then we'll be up. I fell asleep. And I woke up to Zenotic. He came in and he was like, bro, are we going to do it? He had so much energy, bro. Zenotic's always had so much energy, bro. You're going to see that in the podcast. Like, he's such a high spirit, bro. Such good energy, good vibes. You're gonna love him on the podcast. But he comes in and he's like, sits down at the mic and he's like, hey, bro, we going to do this? And I'm waking up. I'm like, huh? Like, I was so out of it. I just couldn't function at all. I'm like, dude, I cannot do this right now. Like, I straight up was like, I can't do this podcast here. I'm so sorry. Because I'd hyped it up so much. Everyone, all the artists they were like, oh yeah, podcast, let's do this, let's go. And I felt so bad because everyone was so hyped and I didn't live up to that, right? I didn't pull through and do the podcast. I mean, the whole time I was still scared as shit to do it, you know? And I'm honestly glad that I did not do it then, because mentally I was even less ready than I was for the Royal T show. And it was terrifying, you know, and having that exhaustion did not help at all. So I'm glad that I felt so bad that I did cancel the podcast on them and on Lebo and everybody, because they seemed pretty pumped to do it. But it's just like, it's what you got to do, you know. If you can't do something, you can't do it, right? I just physically could not do it. And then fast forward to Miami. We get to Miami. It was a bit of a different setup. I didn't bring as much equipment, just had my 2 mics mainly. That just didn't end up working out. Just didn't find the time or the space to really get it going, which I'm kind of relieved for, because that one would have been scuffed as shit. But then, you know, as the Royal T show came up, you know, Royal T, he hit me up and he's like, bro, because I wasn't planning on doing a podcast that day. It was the day of the show. I wasn't planning on doing a podcast. And he hits me up like 2 hours, 3 hours before we were supposed to meet. And he was like, yo, bring your podcast equipment. And I'm like, oh shit, are you for real? Are we doing this? He's like, dude, do it. Chocolate Wafer was bringing it up to him. So he told me to bring my stuff. And I'm like, screw it. You know, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it tonight, because they got a spot for me at the studio to set up. So I packed my stuff and I headed over there. I got all set up, you know, all those nervous feelings and doubts going through my mind. Like, I should have said no. I should have said no. I can't do this. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this. And well, I fucking did it. You know, I just, no matter how scared I was, I used just whatever willpower I could to power through those emotions, those scared feelings, and just do it. And honestly, I feel like just from that one night alone, I've already improved so much. And not, obviously, I still have like, if here's where I was, right, I probably improved like 10 ticks or whatever. But I have a million ticks to improve still. I mean, endless really, but you get the point, right? Like, I improved a lot for that one night, but still have so much to improve. But I'm glad I did it. That's the one thing that you can get from forcing yourself to do things you're not comfortable with, is you'll never regret it afterwards. You'll never regret it. You'll look back and be like, I'm glad I did that because I learned these things. If you can just force yourself to power through the emotions and the doubts and the negativity in your mind, and once you look back and you realize that you did that, and not only do you have no regrets, and you look at everything you've learned, you'll notice how much better it makes you feel. You'll notice how much it's helped you improve in your life. Even if it's just a bunch of small things, it all adds up. And you're going to be so much better than you were if had you not done that, right? And that's what I really felt like I took away from doing this podcast for the Royal T Show. And I'm so excited. Still nervous as hell. Don't get me wrong. I'm still nervous as shit to go do it for Storm Tour. That's crazy. Like that, just thinking about it kind of gives me like, shocks my nerves a little bit. But I'm so excited because I know that knowing that I'm going to learn and grow just from that, from this next one gets me so pumped up to do it. And it allows me to open my mind to just push past any mental blocks that I'm getting. And I think that's super important to finding a hook to pull you through your mental blocks, right? So my hook was, for the Royal T Show, my main hook, honestly, was I don't want to disappoint these guys. I don't want to disappoint this community. Because I already disappointed them once, back in Los Angeles. Sort of disappointment in Miami. I just didn't really come too prepared for that one. So this time I was like, I don't want to disappoint. So if you can find your hook to pull you through whatever mental blocks and barricades you're having, honestly, your life is just going to improve so quickly. You'll realize 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month later, pushing past all these mental blocks and barricades, once you find your hook, you'll realize, man, my life is good. My life is improving much better than it was a month ago, 2 months ago, however long you've been, breaking down these barriers and pulling yourself through. And that's kind of what it's come to. And I want you guys to follow me on this journey of mine of learning from mistakes, learning from experience and everything. I want you guys to follow me. That's the main point of this series, Sub-Era, is I want you guys to follow me with my experiences, and I want to share what I learned, share the thoughts I have. I really hope you guys can take something from it. If not, I apologize that it wasn't informative or not or anything, but if you guys did learn something, let me know. Share your own experiences. If you've had some similar experiences, emotions or feelings, I really want to hear about it, because I love seeing how people respond, and if what I'm, I guess, preaching or whatever is actually influencing people or driving people, or even if I didn't help you, I hope you found some entertainment from this. And honestly, thank you guys so much for listening. You guys are going to have to tune in to the Royal T Show podcast coming this Friday. I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited about what you guys might think of it and the whole community. So stay tuned. If you guys enjoyed, drop a like, subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever, follow. And you guys will definitely be seeing some big stuff coming up in the future. Huge YouTube shoots. If you guys want to follow my YouTube channel, it's just Reese Shalvis. If you're listening on YouTube, everything will be in the description below. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. I hope you guys have a fantastic night, day, wherever it is that you're at. Have a good one. Peace.